That night, everyone sleeps comfortably, except for Stripe, who looks around mischievously. Billy is awoken by sounds of his dog whimpering, and he goes outside to see Barney hung in the air by Christmas lights. One of the first signs that this is actually a horror movie. Of course, Billy suspects Mrs. Deagle. In an earlier version of the script, Gremlins was far grimmer and actually had Barney found dead. Though I don't insist that animals always make it out okay, hello Independence Day, I like this lighter version far better. There's more room for fun when horror is kept within certain bounds. Fun like Rand testing out an electric hammer, something you could find nowadays in any hardware store. The big joke is that it seems completely redundant when you could just do it by hand. Why would anyone ever need that? Well, because it speeds up construction. He puts the hammer down and picks up a mechanical fly swatter device. While that particular design is silly, improvements on the fly swatter do exist. In the 90s, metal fly swatters that electrocute the flies instead of crushing them became popular. Simple designs can be improved upon. Lynn then gets coffee from a personal coffee brewer. This is especially weird because those Keurig machines are so popular now. Everyone is making coffee for themselves. People are able to drink coffee more and they enjoy it more. Everyone's lives are bettered. The next day at school, Billy brings a Mogwai to show to his science teacher, Mr. Hansen. Billy uses a controlled amount of water to produce a single offspring for Mr. Hansen to examine, establishing that the quantity of water informs the number of offspring. Mr. Hansen is the most prominent black character in the film, the only one with any lines, and is pretty much just there for token diversity. When Billy gets home, he pauses in the pub to observe Kate trying to get Mr. Futterman to leave. Futterman's as drunk as a skunk, and he rants about foreign machines. As Kate and Billy try to get him to walk home, he starts claiming that foreigners of some kind planted gremlins in U.S. planes in World War II, and that they're still planting gremlins in various pieces of machinery that get shipped to the States. The whole concept of gremlins comes from the internal folklore of the British Royal Air Force, from World War II and as early as the 1920s. The general concept of the mischievous imp was co-opted to explain mechanical failures. Anytime something broke down, they'd say a gremlin did it. Where the name comes from is a matter of debate, but I like the idea that it comes from a typo of a brand of ale blamed for disorder in a typed report. This is similar to how modern Americans blame the figure of Murphy because of Murphy's Laws. The real-life Edward Murphy was an engineer who just wrote down a series of relatable ideas about how contingency plans are needed because things are apt to fail. But people treat the figure of Murphy as a malicious entity trying to screw up your plans. I've heard people say, "Watch out for Murphy," when people don't make contingency plans. Murphy'll get you. That's pretty much what Gremlins were to the RAF. This meme then spread to the US Air Force, in part because Disney wanted to make a movie about gremlins and a promotional book by Roald Dahl became very popular in the US. Ironic for Futterman to use to justify his bigotry because it didn't originate in America. As we'll learn though, Futterman doesn't really believe in gremlins. He's just a drunk bigot who makes things up to get people to pay attention to him. Billy and Kate share a romantic moment as he walks her home. It's a lovely night with carolers and Christmas atmosphere, and then we become aware of Kate having a bit of a quirk about Christmas time. Despite apparently being Christian, she does not celebrate Christmas, gets depressed around the holiday, and speaks morbidly about there being a lot of suicides during Christmas time. Not true, by the way.
While everybody else is opening up their presents, they're opening up their wrists.
This whole thing is a sick joke that has a sick payoff later in the film, and it's funny because it morbidly distorts the girl-next-door archetype that Kate represents, and delivers more over-the-top characterization. A lot of people just don't get this character because they think that she was an attempt at serious drama done poorly, but it must be understood that her drama is farcical. I think it makes her an enjoyable character. Billy asks her out, and she accepts. It's a very sweet, romantic moment for the Christmas movie side of things. Meanwhile, in the horror film side of things, the token black character takes a blood sample from the Mogwai. He treats the Mogwai in a condescending way and doesn't really make the effort to comfort it. Even though we recognize that this Mogwai is evil, or at least nasty, we feel for him. Let's face it, he's a cute fuzzy animal. Mr. Hansen comes across as a bit of an evil scientist as a result. At home, the evil Mogwais annoy Billy to feed them. The clock says it's not after midnight, so Billy gives them leftover chicken, which they eat ravenously and rather disgustingly. He offers some to Gizmo, but Gizmo suddenly hates the idea of eating. This always makes me wonder what would happen if he did eat after midnight. Would he turn into a good gremlin? Would the gremlin instincts make him evil? If they ever make a Gremlins 3, they should really explore that. We momentarily cut to Mr. Hanson, where we see it is indeed after midnight. When he goes home, the Mogwai eats his sandwich. A cut back to Billy then shows that his clock reads the same time as before we saw the school clock. Uh-oh.
The instructions are very clear. Don't feed the gremlins after midnight. How hard is that?
The next day, Christmas Eve, Billy wakes to find that the evil Mogwais have formed cocoons that look an awful lot like the eggs from Alien. Billy recognizes that the Mogwais chewed through the clock's power cord to trick him. This is in theme with gremlins disrupting technology, though they're not really gremlins, so yeah. Mr. Hanson offers exposition on the cocoons being used to protect the Mogwais while they go through a metamorphosis into something else. Just in time for Rand to be out of town for an inventors convention. He promises he'll do what he can to be home in time for Christmas. It's a classic trope about family at Christmas time that also serves to make the household a little more vulnerable for the gremlins' attack, similar to the dad being on a business trip during the climactic events of Cujo. When Rand attempts to call Lynn, she struggles because of his remote phone invention. It's supposed to be so hilarious that he would think of that because anyone could just walk to the phone. Nowadays, home phones are cordless and can be brought to different parts of the house for convenience. Having phones rooted to one spot is annoyingly inconvenient. And then there are cell phones. Today, everyone carries a phone on them at all times. We are in constant communication with each other. If that town had cell phones, it might deal with the gremlins a bit easier. If everyone in a modern town took video of gremlins and sent it to the media, the armed forces would show up and teenagers wouldn't have to save everyone. In the middle of the day, when Billy is at work, the hatching starts. The scaly gremlins emerge from their cocoons. The one in Mr. Hanson's lab falls out of a box.
Just hatched.
And Mr. Hanson ends up being the only one in the room with it. He approaches it with a candy bar, but the gremlin acts with thoughts of vengeance. Because audiences don't like seeing people hurt cute little animals, we're somewhat rooting for the gremlin. As often happens in American horror movies, the black guy dies first. I suspect this trend comes less from active malice against black people, as from institutional racism making it so that black actors have a hard time getting roles other than the sacrificial lamb characters. The end result is that black characters only exist on the periphery in popular storytelling. The only real presence black people have in the world of Gremlins is through a sacrificial lamb character who we kind of want to see dead because he hurts a cute little fuzzy animal. Billy comes to see Mr. Hanson and finds him dead on the ground, a syringe sticking out of his butt. The actor doesn't even get the dignity of having his head shown. Though the gremlins do cause other deaths throughout the film, the effect of lightening the script makes it so that his death is the most visceral one seen, and that's the end of real black people in the film. Billy reaches for the phone, but the gremlin slashes his hand and then escapes through the vent. Billy goes to bandage his hand, because that's more important than calling his mother, and the gremlin pops out to attack him before disappearing into another vent. At Billy's house, the gremlins torment Gizmo and knock him down the laundry chute. Poor Gizmo! Lynn hears noises, grabs a knife, and goes investigating. Billy calls to warn her, and the gremlins cut the lines. If they had cell phones, they wouldn't have this problem. In the grimmer version of the script, we wouldn't follow Lynn after this. Billy would run home and discover his mother's severed head rolling down the stairs. Fortunately, they decided to make the film lighter than that, and the result is an awesome scene about Lynn facing the gremlins. The Gremlins turn on the Christmas song Do You Hear What I Hear by Johnny Mathis, originally written by Noel Regney and Gloria Shane Baker, as a play for peace during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The incongruity of a Christmas song preaching peace playing over a horror scene is hilarious, and it exemplifies the strange marriage between genres that Gremlins accomplishes. Lynn carefully walks to the record player with the knife and turns it off. A gremlin lobs something at her head but misses. She walks around and discovers a gremlin eating her gingerbread cookies, frosting looking fairly disgusting on his face. The humanoid appearance of the cookie suggests to the viewer that the gremlin might want to eat her, and in the grimmer version it would be made clear that gremlins do in fact eat humans. As it is, we understand that Lynn is in the house alone with monsters. It's terrifying, and she finds the courage to face the threat. The gremlin eats something out of an automatic mixing bowl, because those don't exist, and she darts in to turn it on and spray gory gremlin blood everywhere. A second gremlin throws plates at her, and she grabs a folding table to use as a shield and stabs the gremlin to death like she's a knight with a sword. Imagery associated with Billy as the hero. A third gremlin throws a cookie tray at her, and she uses bug spray to make it back away into the microwave, where she cooks it alive and makes it explode. This mom is awesome. She grabs 2 new knives and investigates a noise in the living room. She sees something actively moving in a Christmas stocking and slashes at it, but it turns out to be a toy set up as bait. The gremlin knocks the Christmas tree on top of her and attacks her. She tries to stab it but can't. Billy runs in, grabs a sword, and decapitates the gremlin. There's that night imagery again. Stripe is the only remaining gremlin and he escapes through the window. This scene could have just killed off a female character for shock value, but it ended up being a really fun action scene positioning the female character as having active agency. Yeah, she needed help with the last one, but she takes care of herself well enough for the first 3. It could easily just come down to who got the jump on whom. Unfortunately, she's then written out of the film. Billy takes her to a neighbor's house to be safe while he takes care of things. The scene with her as an active fighter was just written to explain her survival and to replace her shock value death scene. The script had Billy on his own after that, and if Lynn came along, the whole plot would have to be rewritten. So I understand why this happens, but it's disappointing. I feel like she could have been written out in a way that would grant her more agency, like trying to call the cops or something. Anyway, Billy returns home and into his own movie. He finds Gizmo, puts him in his backpack, and goes after Stripe, following him to the YMCA. Stripe ambushes him, and in the scuffle, Stripe falls into the swimming pool. Uh-oh.